I'd like us to take a little time to dig deeper into the process of setting a goal with our clients. Our textbook really gives us the idea of how to approach that process with the spirit of motivational interviewing. But in this video, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what those goals might look like and how we define and identify a really useful goal. You are going to help your client define the real goal, which in this case is going to be the behavior that the client will engage in between this session and the next one. Sometimes you're going to have to help your clients nail that down into a specific goal from something broader that they start with. So for instance, if your client came in to your session because of a lipid panel, they might tell you, my goal is to bring down my cholesterol. So your response can be, great, that is a terrific starting point. Let's talk about how you're going to get there. We take this approach because lowering the blood cholesterol, that's really the anticipated result. It's also known as the outcome goal. This is what might happen down the road that your client is aiming to see. That might be something that you would be monitoring and evaluating for long term, but it's not something your client has immediate and complete autonomous control over in the moment. So we want to work with the client to figure out what steps he can take, what specific behaviors she will engage in. So, as another example, your client might realize changes to the diet could benefit him. So he might say, I'm going to start eating more vegetables. Your response might be, all right, that could really help you manage your cholesterol levels. But we know that this is still very broad. So as you are working with your client, you're going to encourage him to start fleshing that out and defining exactly what that's going to look like. You might ask, how many vegetables are you going to have? How often will you have them? When? You might even talk to your client about specific veggies that he's going to choose. So we're going to help clients to get the goal to be more specific. For instance, I'm going to eat 2 servings of vegetables for lunch and 2 more servings again at dinner. What your client has identified now is a specific goal. It's also a behavioral goal. You and your client have identified particular steps or actions that the client can take. The client knows what is expected of him, when he's achieved it, and how he can achieve it. So let's go into some more details about what we're looking for in these behavioral goals. Probably most, if not all of you, have heard of SMART goals before. You might not have all learned the acronym the exact same way, but that's okay, because for this class, this is the particular version I want you to remember, and it's got a little twist. So if you're used to some different versions of what this acronym stands for, please make sure to make note of this version, because this is what you will be responsible for knowing in this class. We're going to talk about SMART Plus goals. So you need that little positive sign at the end. SMART Plus goals are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound, and positive. If you utilize this acronym, you're going to help your clients to set particular behavioral goals that are most likely to help them achieve those long-term outcomes they are aiming for. So let's break this down a little bit. You can see I'm going to discuss the components that the goal be specific, measurable, and time-bound together. All of these ideas represent the logistics of the goal, the what, the when, and the how. This is so we know very specifically when the goal has been attained or whether the goal was even attained. And that should be clear to both the client and to you. So you want to work with your clients to determine these details for the goal because it will help your clients to be successful. And in particular, this will help you to avoid using vague terms or terms that are not well defined. For instance, if a client says, I will use less salad dressing, or I will eat more vegetables, I'm going to try to go to the gym once a week. This is not using clear, specific, positive terminology. Keep in mind, specific and measurable may be words that are clearer to you. Time-bound means we know by when or over what period of time that goal is going to be reached. Next, let's talk about what we mean when we discuss an actionable goal, because this A may be different from ones that you've seen before. This means that the client should have control over the goal. They can take that step or engage in that action themselves. The goal should not depend on another person. Now, it is absolutely okay, and in many cases, I would even encourage clients to think about how they can engage their friends and family members as a support network to help them stay motivated and on track. However, the goal has to be about what the client will do, not what somebody else in their life is going to do. So for instance, it's not an appropriate goal for the client to say, my friend is going to call me once a week to remind me to work out. That is not actionable. It's not within the client's control. But an appropriate goal could be, I'm going to set a weekly workout date with my best friend. That is something the client has control over. So the client is going to follow through on that behavior of setting that workout date with her friend. Another thing I want to point out here that is often a little confusing for students, and in fact I would say it is often confusing for clients as well as other counselors, is that weight loss is not a behavioral goal. The client does not have complete control over weight loss. There are a lot of factors that influence whether the number on the scale goes up or down. There are certainly specific SMART Plus behavioral goals that the client could set that might lead them toward weight loss, and if that is their long-term outcome goal, then you can help them to define specific behaviors that are going to help them get there. We will talk more in this course about whether aiming for weight loss is something that you want to encourage your client to do, or maybe not. But if you are working with a client on this path, remember to help them set those actionable SMART Plus goals that they have control over. I will tell you to never let your client walk out of a session with a goal along the lines of, I will lose X number of pounds this week. Instead, talk about changes to their eating or their physical activity that will help them get there. Of course, we also want our client to choose realistic goals. So we always want to consider the client's starting point. For instance, if a client is currently not working out at all, setting a goal to start working out 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, might not set them up for success. Remember that small changes count. Sometimes a client, let's again use the example of one who is not at all active right now, is in reality only going to be comfortable making a very small change. They might say, I am going to start walking in my neighborhood 15 minutes a week, and that might be it. And you might be thinking, but you could do so much more. But the reality is, it's much more important for your client to successfully achieve his initial goal and then build confidence and then start to take on a little bit more than it is for you to set your client up with a goal that aligns with the national recommendations on physical activity and then have your client falter and get frustrated and potentially give up. In that case, your client feels bad about himself, he may be too embarrassed or uncomfortable to come back, and you don't have the opportunity to continue to work with him and help him gradually make his way up to the level of physical activity that you know he is capable of down the road. Another aspect of being realistic about goals is to prevent your client from trying to commit to a long laundry list of goals. If your client is incredibly motivated, I know that sometimes they want to do everything all at once, all of the possible behavior changes that maybe came up in your session. When that happens, I will respond to my client along these lines. I love it that you want to try all of those things. Let's pick the top 3. The ones that you feel you really want to focus on first between now and the next time we meet. If you end up deciding you want to take on more, great. But let's make it that these are the 3 that you're absolutely committing to at this time. And everything else that you might try would just be a bonus. Again, we want to remember our purpose here is to set our client up for success. So if we are realistic with the number of behavior changes that they can take on at one time, we are much more likely to see them come back and continue to add new behavior changes to their list at that time because they were successful with the first ones. Now let's talk about that plus sign, positive goals. When we talk about negative goals, those are the ones where we focus on what the client is not going to do or what the client is going to take away. The focus becomes on what the client will miss out on, so that can be very disheartening and depressing. This is why we want to set up a positive goal that focuses on what the client gets to do, what the new behaviors are going to be. This positive focus will again enhance the chances that the client will be successful. And remember, that is what this process is all about. So, a negative goal might read like this: I won't eat ice cream for dessert on at least 3 days of the week. Now the client is thinking about all the times when he doesn't get to have ice cream. But if we reframe that same idea in a positive way, so that the goal is focused on what the client will get to do, then it's much more likely that the client will commit to this and follow through. Here would be a positive goal of that same example. I will eat a yogurt parfait for my dessert at least 3 days of the week. The implication is, of course, those are days when the client will eat the yogurt parfait instead of the ice cream. So really, the goal is essentially the same. However, in this case, the phrasing makes all the difference in how the client will feel about moving forward with that goal, focusing on what he gets to do instead of what he cannot do. Hopefully, this video has given you a clear sense then of what I am encouraging you to work on when I tell you to set SMART Plus behavioral goals with your clients to help them successfully make health-promoting behavioral changes.